You achieved it. Everything you told yourself you needed. The job that consumed your thoughts for years, the person you convinced yourself would complete you, the money that promised security and peace. You finally held it in your hands. For one moment, maybe 1 week, you felt something close to what you imagined happiness would feel like. And then something shifted. 3 months pass, 6 months, and that feeling, that promised fulfillment, begins to fade like morning mist. The job that was supposed to be perfect starts feeling hollow. The person you loved with such intensity becomes ordinary. The money you needed so desperately no longer satisfies. You find yourself asking a question in the silence of your room. Is this all there is? This feeling, this recurring, crushing emptiness that returns no matter what you achieve, is not a personal failure. It is not a sign that you haven't worked hard enough or that you haven't found the right thing to pursue. It is a sign of something far deeper. It is a sign that you are caught in a trap. We live in a civilization built on a lie. We are taught from childhood that happiness is conditional, that it lives somewhere in the future. When you get the degree, when you get the promotion, when you find love, when you earn enough money, then you will be happy. Then your life will finally begin. This belief is so deeply woven into our culture that we don't even question it. We inherit it like a sickness passed from parent to child, from society to individual. And so we spend our entire lives running towards something, always towards something, always away from this present moment, which is, paradoxically, the only moment we actually have. Tell me something. How long have you been running? How many goals have you achieved, only to find yourself setting new ones? How many times have you finally arrived at what you thought was the destination, only to discover that the destination was not the place you were searching for at all? This is not a failure of ambition. This is not a failure of effort. This is something else entirely. This is the structure of how your mind has been shaped to operate. 350 years ago, in the city of Amsterdam, there lived a man who understood this trap with a clarity that few before or after him have ever achieved. His name was Baruch Spinoza, and his life was, by any conventional measure, a failure. Spinoza was born into a wealthy family of Portuguese Jews in Amsterdam. But before he reached manhood, he began asking questions that terrified those around him. He questioned the nature of God. He questioned authority. He questioned the received wisdom that everyone around him accepted without thought. His family tried to silence him. His community condemned him. And when he refused to stop questioning, they excommunicated him. At the age of 23 years old, he was cast out. The curse was brutal. No one could speak to him. No one could do business with him. No one could even be in his presence. He was dead to them. Most men would have broken. But Spinoza did something extraordinary. He moved to a small room outside the city. He took up the craft of grinding and polishing optical lenses, work that was humble, that was solitary, that paid barely enough to survive. And in that small room, while his hands worked the glass, his mind was constructing one of the most radical philosophies the world has ever known. He had nothing, no family, no community, no security, no future. And yet, in the letters he wrote during this time, there is a calm, there is a peace, there is even something that could only be called joy. Why? Because Spinoza had discovered something that the rest of us are still searching for. He had discovered that the trap we are all caught in, this endless pursuit of external things, is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how happiness actually works. We believe that happiness comes from possessing things, from controlling our circumstances, from achieving outcomes. We believe that if we could just arrange the external world correctly, then we would finally feel the way we want to feel. But this is precisely backwards. You see, there is a force in the universe that Spinoza spent his life understanding. He called it many things, but the simplest way to understand it is this. Everything in existence, including you, has an inherent drive to persist, to grow, to increase its power and understanding. This is not physical power. It is not the power to dominate or control. It is the power of consciousness, the power of understanding, the power of expanding what you know and comprehend about the nature of reality. Now listen carefully. Spinoza discovered that there are two kinds of emotional states, two fundamentally different ways your mind can operate. The first is what he called sadness. But do not mistake this word for mere sadness as we use it today. For Spinoza, sadness is any state in which your power, your capacity to think, to act, to understand is diminished. And sadness comes from a single source. It comes from being controlled by causes you do not understand. It comes from being a slave to external circumstances, to other people's opinions, to desires you don't know why you have. Think about this. When you are anxious about a goal you haven't achieved, you are being controlled by something external, by an imagined future that exists only in your mind. When you are devastated because someone rejected you, you are being controlled by another person's actions and choices. When you are ashamed of something from your past, you are being controlled by something that no longer even exists. In all of these cases, your power has been taken from you. Your capacity to think freely has been hijacked by external causes. And what does this feel like? It feels like sadness. It feels like anxiety. It feels like emptiness. It feels like that void that returns no matter what you achieve. This is the trap. But then, and this is where everything changes, Spinoza identified something else. He identified a second kind of emotional state. He called it joy, true joy. Joy comes from a single source. It comes from increasing your understanding. It comes from grasping truth. It comes from seeing how things are actually connected, how causes operate, how the universe actually works. When your understanding grows, your power grows. When your power grows, you feel what joy actually is. Not the temporary pleasure of achieving a goal, not the fleeting satisfaction of possessing something, but a deep, abiding sense that your capacity to exist, to think, to be, is expanding. Here is the revelation that most people never arrive at. The people who are truly content, the ones who are not constantly seeking, constantly grasping, constantly disappointed, are not the ones who have the most stuff. They are not the ones with the best outcomes. They are the ones who understand. Do you understand why you pursue what you pursue? Do you understand what you actually want? Or are you simply chasing what you have been taught to want? Do you understand the person you love? Or are you simply projecting your fantasies onto them? Do you understand the world around you? Or are you being swept along by currents you don't see? These are not philosophical questions. These are survival questions. Because here is what Spinoza's life demonstrated. A man can be poor, alone, exiled, sick, and yet experience a profound joy simply because his mind is free, simply because he understands. And a man can have everything: wealth, status, love, security, and yet be in constant suffering because his mind is enslaved to external causes, to things he cannot control, to desires he does not understand. The trap, then, is not that you want too much. The trap is that you want the wrong things, and you want them for the wrong reasons. You pursue money believing it will bring security, but you don't understand that money is only a tool. You pursue love believing it will bring completion, but you don't understand that another person can never complete you. They can only meet you if you are already whole. You pursue status believing it will bring self-worth, but you don't understand that self-worth comes only from understanding who you actually are. So you achieve these things, and the trap tightens, because now you are dependent on maintaining them. Now you are a prisoner to their preservation. The job that was supposed to liberate you has become a cage. The person you love has become a source of fear of losing them. The money you accumulated is now a burden, the constant anxiety of protecting it. This is why the emptiness returns. It does not return because there is something wrong with you. It returns because you are playing a game where you can never win. You are chasing an external solution to an internal problem. But now comes the shift, the moment everything can change. What if, starting today, you stopped asking, "What can I get from the world?" What if you started asking instead, "What can I understand about the world?" This is not a small change. This is a complete reversal of orientation. When you ask the first question, "What can I get?" you are positioning yourself as powerless. You are saying, "My happiness depends on external circumstances arranging themselves in a particular way." You are a beggar. You are at the mercy of forces beyond your control. But when you ask the second question, "What can I understand?" you are reclaiming your power. You are saying, "My capacity to exist and think is not dependent on anything external. It is dependent only on my willingness to see clearly." Do you feel the difference? Think about something you are anxious about right now, something that disturbs your peace. Notice that the anxiety only has power over you insofar as you do not understand it. You don't understand why you want what you want. You don't understand why this person matters so much to you. You don't understand what you're really afraid of. And because you don't understand, the anxiety is formless. It is a shadow. It is a storm with no visible source. It controls you because it remains invisible to you. But what happens when you turn and face it directly? What happens when you start asking, "Why do I feel this way? What am I actually afraid of? What belief am I operating from?" Suddenly, understanding begins to dawn. The shadow takes form, and the moment it takes form, the moment you comprehend it, it loses its power over you. This is what Spinoza meant by freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom from being controlled by things you don't understand. Now, I want to ask you something, and I want you to sit with this for a moment. What if the thing you're pursuing right now, the goal, the relationship, the achievement you're focused on, what if it arrived tomorrow? What would actually change? Not temporarily. Temporarily, things always feel different. But after the newness wore off, after the initial satisfaction passed, what would be fundamentally different about your capacity to think, to understand, to be free? The answer, if you're honest with yourself, is probably nothing. Because achieving something external doesn't change your mind. It doesn't expand your understanding. It doesn't make you more free. It just gives you a new thing to worry about losing. But here is what does change your mind. Learning something true, understanding yourself more deeply, seeing a pattern you were blind to, grasping how something actually works, having a moment of genuine clarity about why you are the way you are. These experiences are where real joy comes from. Not from getting, but from understanding. So here is what Spinoza offers you. Here is the cure for the trap. Stop focusing on arranging your circumstances perfectly. You cannot. You will not. The circumstances of life are too vast, too complex, too beyond your control. Instead, focus on expanding your understanding of yourself, understanding of the world, understanding of why things are the way they are. With each truth you grasp, your power increases. With each thing you understand, the less you are controlled by it. With each illusion you see through, you become more free. You don't have to wait for the perfect job to start thinking more clearly about what work actually means to you. You don't have to wait for the perfect person to start understanding yourself more deeply. You don't have to wait for financial security to begin grasping how the world actually works. All of that understanding is available to you right now, today, in this moment. This is not escapism. This is not about ignoring your responsibilities or pretending circumstances don't matter. Spinoza worked. Spinoza engaged with the world. But he did it from a different place. He did it from understanding rather than from desperation. He did it from freedom rather than from slavery to conditional happiness. And the paradox is this: when you stop chasing happiness as if it lives in the future, when you start focusing on expanding your understanding, joy begins to find you in the present, not as a reward for achieving something, but as a natural consequence of becoming more conscious, more aware, more free. The endless pursuit ends not when you finally get the thing you're chasing. It ends when you realize you were chasing the wrong thing all along. It ends when you shift from, "What must I get to be happy?" to, "What must I understand to be free?" And that shift, that moment of reorientation changes everything. Not your circumstances, but you. And when you change, your circumstances stop having the same power over you. Spinoza knew this, and so he sat in his small room, polishing lenses, building a philosophy that would eventually reshape human thought, not because he was waiting for the right conditions, but because he had already found the only condition that actually matters: understanding. Now it's your turn. What is one thing you could understand more deeply, starting today? What belief have you inherited that you've never really questioned? What pattern in your own behavior could you finally see clearly? Because somewhere in that understanding, real freedom is waiting. Not the freedom to get what you want, but the freedom from needing to get what you want in order to be okay. This is the cure for spiritual exhaustion. This is the escape from the trap. And it begins with a single shift in perspective. Before you go, I want you to write something in the comments below. I want you to write a single phrase, a mantra, an affirmation, something that captures this shift for you. Maybe it's, "I am free to understand." Maybe it's my power is in knowing, not in getting. Maybe it's something entirely different, something that speaks to your own awakening. Write it, share it, because when you put it into words, you make it real, you claim it, you begin to live it. The trap is real, but the escape is real too. And it starts with a single question, not what can I get, but what can I understand? Find your answer, and then find your freedom.